Thanks for having me here, and congratulations to all of the winners. I can't wait to kind of hear the question and answer. I had a couple surprising experiences since I got off the plane on Friday evening, apart from the snowstorm, what I would call a snowstorm. I'm not sure what you call it, sprinkling. But for me, it was really surprising, a little bit jolting. The second surprise was I got to walk around a little bit on Saturday. And the first shop I walked into, I was greeted with a, "Hey!" And in the States, when you say hey like that, it's a friend. It's a close friend, probably, someone you know well enough to kind of greet them enthusiastically. So I thought, I don't think I know this person. So, I said, oh, maybe it's Saturday, there was a little bit of music. It was a kind of a trendy shop, so I went to the next place. Same thing. Hey! And I thought, wow. So shop after shop, person after person throughout the day, I got this kind of greeting, and it really, I don't know, now I feel like everyone in Stockholm is my friend. So, hey. I guess I'll start. Truett gave a really great kind of overview and provided me some great insight and security in what I'm going to talk to you about today. I was a little bit worried that some of the stuff that I was going to share with you and that we were going to talk about may not, I guess, be exactly what you needed to know or what you wanted to know. But I think both of us have sort of similar things to say. And as communications people, you have to say it at least 3 times before it sinks in. So this is your second time. And maybe throughout the night, you'll have your third sort of experience with sort of the key messages. So today, I just kind of want to take us back out of Sweden really quick, out of Stockholm, out of Scandinavia, and talk about a little bit about what we know today in terms of people in the world. The population is about 7 billion people right now in the world. Nearly 2 billion people use the internet, so that's about 30% of the world. 5 billion have active mobile phone subscriptions worldwide. About 6.1 trillion SMS text messages were sent last year in 2010. 200 million Twitter users tweet over 51 billion tweets per year, so that's about 1 billion tweets per week worldwide. More than 30 billion pieces of content, so that's web links, blog posts, photos, those sorts of things, on Facebook alone each month. So what does that mean to us? What are the implications of so many people connected on such a massive scale? And really, what are the implications of people having this kind of information, this amount of information at their fingertips, and moving away from what we would call probably that traditional hierarchy, information hierarchy of a sort of top-down information consumption? What happens to the way the world functions? So we've been talking about this for a while, I think, as communications professionals, but throughout the world in general. What are the implications of this? So I don't need to go into kind of those details. The conversation, and I think one of the implications is transparency. I'm going to dive right into that because it's not a conversation that we need to have in terms of, is it good, is it bad, is it right, or is it wrong? It's the reality that we live in as communications professionals, as people in general. It's here, and we have to figure out how we're going to be productive and successful in this new world. So you might not need to listen to the rest of the presentation or stick around for 30 minutes because the bottom line is we need to radically change the way we think about the work that we do and how we communicate to our target audiences, or what we'd call publics. But I think we're all in the room here today because we kind of already know that on some level. So to me, the implications of everyone, so many people connected on a massive scale, is that we're breaking down traditional barriers. We're opening up boardrooms. People are accessing public and private information in a rapidly consumable way. Our organizational insides are literally being turned out. So this quote, the 21st century is a terrible time to be a control freak. As communications professionals, I don't think any of us feel good about that. Because we're taught that messaging, framing, control, those are the things that either we do or we're striving to do. Because that makes our jobs easier. It makes our bosses' jobs easier. But this quote spoke to me. It was said by Jared Cohen, who is a new director at something called Google Ideas. It's a think tank. And he worked at the US State Department under Condoleezza Rice and then later Hillary Clinton, and then he left to go to Google. He was talking about what the US and I think broadly, diplomats in the world call 21st century statecraft. Which is informed by the understanding that states and governments are working under completely new conditions. A world, like we just talked about, in which everyone is connected. A place where the communication feedback loop is becoming faster and faster. Constraints of time and space are basically, rapidly shrinking. It's a world where micro-technologies are deconstructing life as we know it. In organizations, governments, educational systems, healthcare systems, people in general, in our everyday lives. We're trying to figure out, and we're scrambling to figure out how we're gonna work through this. How are we gonna be successful? How are we gonna adjust? So again, as communicators and as business professionals, we think a lot about messaging, control, and framing. And I think we really need to start thinking beyond this. And so we want to start talking about and thinking about authenticity, general conversations or genuine conversations, and of course, transparency. We still need to be smart communications professionals, responsible, but we just really need to change the way we think about the work that we do. 21st century communications, I think, is less about control and more about learning how to engage. So a quick example about learning how to engage. I'm sure lots of people here have iPhones, and I've seen lots of iPhone 4s hanging out in Stockholm. I'm not sure if you guys followed AntennaGate in the States, and I think this was sort of a worldwide thing, but it really hit hard, especially in San Francisco. It was called the grip of death on the iPhone. And so basically, when you held an iPhone, the antenna stopped working or didn't work properly. So all those Apple fanboys or fangirls that waited in line to get the first ones and spent their afternoons or weekends sleeping outside in the cold, got a hold of one of these, took it home, and realized that some of them didn't work. So they kind of talked to each other. They talked within their networks, and they tweeted a little bit about it. So it was kind of whispering on the internet. And then they connected with other people, and they realized, hey, this isn't just a me problem. This is a product problem. And so they asked Apple, what's the problem? What are you going to do about it? And Apple said, hey, there's no problem. We don't know what you're talking about. But when hundreds of people have talked and hundreds of people have shared, there's no doubt in their minds that there's a problem, especially when they have the power of many. So then this chatter turned into blog posts. These blog posts turned into media attention. And then Apple said, OK, it's a software problem. It's not an antenna problem. It's those bars in your software. They're just not right. That's the problem. And so more media attention snowballed into what is now known as AntennaGate. Finally, Apple came back and said, OK, you're right. There's a problem, and take these little rubber bands and put them around your phone, and that's how we're going to solve it. So they did address it. They did take responsibility for it, and now it's fixed. So I think the thing here, and the lesson that we learn and we should understand is the internet doesn't forget, and sooner or later, the internet finds out. And that was from Seth Godin, who's an internet marketer and entrepreneur. And when we talk about the internet, we're talking about people, networked people, right? So I want to talk about people and conversations is maybe the lens that we can use together when we talk about social media and online community building. So there's a couple buckets right now that I think most of us are in when we talk about our reaction to this everyone's connected, what do we do, social media, online community building. And one is fear. People are afraid, or they're recalcitrant, or they're not sure how to move forward, or they're just waiting until they have to move forward. Some are engaging or trying to engage. And I think most of us, even myself at times, are in this sort of bucket of doing a little bit of both, or like my dad would say, half-assing it. You're trying to figure it out, but you're not. You've got one foot here and one foot on the other side. And I think there's a couple things, I think, from the survey that we're learning, I think, the problems that you're facing and that people all over the world are facing that are working in our industry. We understand what needs to be done, but our internal clients or our bosses don't, or the organization doesn't. Or our organizational leaders have a vague understanding of what needs to be done, and they've kind of told us that it needs to be done, but they're not giving us the resources or the support to do it effectively. And then I think lots of us are right now in a place where we've got to do it, the organization says we've got to do it because everyone else is doing it, but we don't really know why. And I think that's probably the most dangerous place to be. But again, keep in mind, we'll use the concept of social media and online community to describe some things. But what we should understand is that social media sites today are, I would call, a trend. Twitter, Facebook, yesterday it was MySpace, before that was Friendster. These platforms, I would say, are a trend. I don't think they're unimportant, and they're not trends that I think will go away soon. They'll be around for a long time. But the way you should think about social media is as a new channel that fundamentally and systemically changes the way people interact with organizations and with each other, not by the tools that just facilitate this change. At its core, social media really means facilitating conversation, connection, learning, and response, again, between people and organizations. So, not to lecture or be too didactic, but just taking you back to my college days as a communications major, a 20-year-old major, the things that we're forced to learn are a couple theories from Jim Grunig, who we call the godfather or the grandfather of public relations and communications theory. And he had 4 models that he said we're kind of working within. So the first model is press agentry, and that's a one-way push of information. These were folks who weren't interested in, truth. They weren't interested in accuracy. They were just interested in eyeballs and getting coverage for their clients. And right now, I think the best way to describe, or to, I guess, the best example would be maybe in the entertainment industry, so publicists in the entertainment industry. The second one is a public information model. It's still a one-way, but taking a little bit more of an interest in accuracy and receiving a little bit of feedback, but not really. It's still a one-way push to persuade people to think one way. Some of the hallmarks of this would be just press release pushes or any other kinds of static content. Even on websites, it can be online, but it's static, and it's not interested in receiving anything. It's only interested in communicating out. The second, or actually the third, is two-way asymmetrical. And so I think most of us are here right now. And basically what that is, it's still interested in persuasion, generally focuses on a short-term goal, and doesn't incorporate a lot of feedback. They take feedback, they use it to create sort of persuasive messages, but they don't actually take that and absorb that information and change the way they're doing business or change the way the organization is working. And then finally, where I think we're headed and what we aspire to do would be that two-way symmetrical. So that's a real, genuine conversation between an organization and its publics. It's an honest, it's open, and it's two-way. And it's about engaging and being willing to actually make significant changes in the way you do things once you do receive that feedback from your audiences or your customers or your donors, whoever it is who is taking the time, whether it's a second or it's a month to write a blog post, but they're taking their time to give you some information. And if you don't do it, there's something that happens to that relationship, right? One by one by one. So remembering that. So although new digital media, online, community building is the latest trend in public communications. The exciting thing about these new tools, I think, is that it echoes what was exciting about the internet. It's sort of the original promise the internet had in the first place. The promise that we could be more global, more transparent, interactive, socially responsible, and just more human. But a lot of us are still doing things the same old way. We're using these same old tools as a means of barraging messages and talking at people rather than having conversations with them. So the information that you garner going forward, really think about how you can bring that into your organization and make it useful, and then show them that you're actually using it to impact your decision making. So I come to you from your future, the Wikimedia Foundation, or a future, or some future. I think there's a couple of things that I think I can, the stuff that I'm working in and learning right now will be stuff that once your social online communities are robust and mature, there'll be things that you need to think about as well. Because I think there's a lot of good work that's being done, but we're still just figuring out this digital landscape. And so I thought I might kind of talk to you about what your future could look like. It looks like this. It's round, and it's missing a top. So let me take a step back and give you a little bit of an overview of what Wikipedia is, because I'm sure everyone here has a baseline understanding of what it is, but maybe you'd like to meet some of the people I work with.
YU, C Brown 1023.
Or not. Let me see, give it a second to see if we can get the audio working. Okay.
My username is Pisha Online.
No.
YU, C Brown 1023.
22 Kartika.
I wonder
My username is Church of Emacs.
if I get close.
It's you, P.
It's Chomsky 1. Nasib 8891. Not a fish.
Okay, well, how about I do this? Raise your hand if you're a Wikipedian. Oh my goodness, are you kidding? Wow. I was expecting at least two, because I know there were two in the audience here, Jan, and I'm not sure where Axel is. Axel is a communications volunteer that I work with, and Jan here is he works with Wiki News, I think, most of the time, and takes a lot of photos. But wow, I kind of want to give you a hand and thank you. Can we all give a round of applause to the Wikipedians here? I'm really, really surprised. Thank you. Thank you for making this amazing thing and taking care of this amazing public resource that we all have. To tell you a little bit about you throughout the world, there's 100,000 people who edit about 5 or more times a month all over the world. They're communications professionals and anthropologists, gardeners, Pokemon players, they're students and professors. They're all of us. They look like you and I, but they're passionate about sharing what they know, and they do it for free. Wikipedia is the top 5 website in the world. right after Facebook. There are about 414 million readers a month, so that's in unique visitors a month to the sites. About 18 million articles right now. And if you're interested where the Swedish Wikipedia stands, English is about 3.5 million, German is about 1 million, and Swedish is number 11 out of 270 with about 400,000 articles. So that's how many languages Wikipedia is in all over the world. And about 20% of humanity uses Wikipedia. And this is what, in terms of audience, compared to other information sites like CNN or BBC, all of the places that people kind of go for information. And this is how much it costs. And this is how much we spend on marketing and advertising. So we're a nonprofit organization. We just recently closed a fundraiser, and 500,000 people donated an average of $23, equaling about $14 million total to this amazing movement. So I think I'll just dive into some of the things that I think an open and transparent organization and movement like the Wikimedia movement and Wikipedia in particular, some of the things that we're doing. Because transparency and openness are worked into our everyday lives. It's just indicative of a wiki culture in general, but then also as a foundation working to support a movement, it has to be something that we think about on a daily basis. I mean, it's not a decision that we made, it was already part of our DNA. We're also, just taking a step back, as a staff member, there's about 60 of us who support these hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. We are still working to do it better. And so here are some of the ways that we're doing that. We just closed a 5-year strategic plan. And I think we're all sort of aware of what that means. A 5-year strategic plan, or a strategic plan in general, means a bunch of executives get in the boardroom and they hide out for a couple of days or a week, and then they emerge with this roadmap that's going to make the organization successful. We couldn't do it that way. But we did need to have some sort of roadmap to look at what do we need to do, what do we need to accomplish to make sure that the sites stay successful. So about 1,000 people got on a wiki, and we invited anyone and everyone who was interested, from readers to editors to donors to staff members, anyone who felt compelled to help us figure out what we were going to do for the next 5 years. We invited them in on Wiki. And every comment, every piece of information, every discussion is there, still there. If you go to Strategy Wiki, you can see the strategy document in the making. Our monthly metrics meeting. So again, everyone should be familiar with the weekly or monthly staff meeting. We do it a little bit differently. We've opened it up, and we're trying to do it better, but we've opened it up to people who want to call. From the community, our readers, journalists, anyone who wants to call in and listen to our monthly staff meeting. Sounds boring, but it's just another way for us to open up doors and let people in. We're looking to do it sort of more in a multimedia fashion with video and as many callers as we can take, but it's a small scale. It's on a small scale right now, but we're hoping to do it better. This is something that is really important to me, and I spend a lot of my time working with something called the Communications Committee, or ComCom. And this is a group of people on a listserv, unpaid, self-selected or appointed communications professionals, or actually not professionals, volunteers throughout the world. So to give you sort of a background on the work that I do, given the hugeness and the vastness of the organization and the movement that I support, there are only 2 communications people in the department. So in 270 languages, 20% of humanity using our product, it just doesn't scale. And the only way that we can be successful is making sure that we're working very well with our volunteers. And so to make it a little bit more relevant for you, when I say volunteer, you might want to think to yourself, because not everyone, I understand only 5% of people in Sweden are working for nonprofits or communications professionals here. So think evangelist. You're evangelists. Or you're highly motivated fanboys or consumers, right? Those, or your donors. Our volunteers are the lifeblood of what we do, right? They're the heart and soul, and we have to make sure to work really closely with them. So on the communications committee, we do things that I think most communications professionals would just freak out about. The beauty of the site, or the listserv that we have, there's about 100 right now volunteers on the listserv. And someone from Hungary, a volunteer, will say, oh, goodness, I just got a call from an ex-journalist, and he's asking about this question, and, it's kind of a sensitive thing, and, I think he's going to write a bad article about it, or, something like that. And someone will come in, from Israel and say, wow, we actually just worked on something similar to this last year. And so here's what I said when I got that question. And then someone from Germany will go, 3 years ago, we had a really similar situation as well. And then I'll say, yeah, I remember that. And then we all collaboratively work on, or try to work on a solution. Press releases. A lot of times, either I try to get the foundation press releases to ComCom as early as possible, because I know that has implications for my volunteers all over the world, right? Or the volunteers I work with all over the world. And there's been a couple of times where we also just collaboratively write those press releases together when it's really important for our volunteers, when they're really interested in making sure that the information is accurate for them or helpful for them. We collaboratively create talking points and press releases together, and that's the way we work. Office hours and IRC. This is something that I'm trying to get better at. If you're not familiar with an old school sort of antiquated term, IRC, it's sort of a chat room. So I sit in a chat room, I get into work, and I open up a chat room. And I sit there. And I do other things, but throughout the day I have this chat room open. It's kind of like having your office door open. And anyone from the communications team, or actually anyone in the community that's interested in popping by and asking a question, or wanting to have a conversation about anything, I'm there and ready to take questions. Our staff, anyone and everyone on staff, a couple of them a month, from our executive director down to associates, they do something called office hours. And what that means is, again, they'll sit in IRC, and anyone in the world can ask any question they want. Of course, it's a facilitated conversation, and we try and stay sort of on topic in terms of talking about the movement or the things that the foundation does. But that's the kind of way we facilitate conversations. So rather than waiting for press conferences or waiting for something to bubble up and we have a crisis or a situation or people who are angry, there's always an ongoing conversation that happens. And social media, I think a lot of us are obviously interested in this, and it's funny because it's a sort of this collaborative wiki, and then what's our social media strategy? It's changing a lot right now. I've been doing some thinking with some volunteers and some other staff members about how to make this open. When we started the social media handles, Twitter and Facebook, it just didn't feel genuine. I had the admin rights, and a couple other staff members had the admin rights, but when you have something, just that globe that represents millions of people, it doesn't feel right that I'm the only one, or there's only a couple of us determining what gets pushed out, or how that handle interacts with the rest of the world. So what we're working to do right now is to make it a little bit more open and inclusive, inviting volunteers onto the handle who actually have admin rights too, and work together with them to determine what we post. And the second way we're doing that is starting sort of a wiki page where anyone can come in and recommend blog posts or write draft blog posts that we could post to the foundation site. Or then write micro blog posts. What should we be talking about on Facebook? What should we be having conversations about on Twitter? And it's a way to kind of open it up and make it more representative of the people who are actually doing the work of the projects. So I know that my world doesn't seem like the real world. And I know that we have I recognize that we have different bottom lines. So you're probably thinking, yeah, you're a nonprofit. It's a little bit easier to do these kinds of things, to employ these kinds of conversations. But we have to think about jobs, and we have to think about shareholders and those kinds of things. But when you look at the brand that I work with, just when you think about the brand, there's a bottom line for us as well, and that's, do people trust Wikipedia? The credibility of Wikipedia. Will people continue to donate to us? If they do get the wrong message. So we do have similar stakes involved. So I did also struggle with some practical tips, because I know these seem really radical. Especially when you're just now kind of figuring out the social media landscape and not really sure which way to go or what to do, that these kind of seem a little crazy and not tangible for you. So just looking at some practical thoughts or suggestions. What I've been seeing is social media as customer service, and I made this mistake too. Social media is not customer service unless it is. Right? And so you have to figure out if it is or isn't, because increasingly what we're seeing is communications are now taking on the burden, or the, you don't want to call it a burden, but the responsibility of customer service. And so you're not getting the support, you're not getting the resources, but now you've also got to answer questions that you're not really sure how to answer. There are some organizations like Best Buy. It's I guess a consumer products, technology products company store in the US. They've got an actual customer service handle that they have on Twitter. So people understand that if you tweet to them, it is a customer service channel. But if you're just tweeting to Best Buy, you're kind of delineating how people understand, right? When they search and they figure out things, it kind of helps delineate that. And then also, you don't want to train your audiences or your publics or your stakeholders to tweet their pain, especially if you can't do anything to fix it. So when you're acting as a customer service representative, as a communications professional, and you're not able to actually help these people or your audiences get through the problem, then what you're really only doing is teaching them that they should be screaming at you on the internet. And should you really be on Twitter? It's more rhetorical than anything else, because I think increasingly the answer is yes for most of us. But some of the conversations that I've been having with other organizations that are, maybe if you're a plastics company or you're an oil company, or even if you're a law firm, think about the conversation that you're going to have, and think about the resources that you have in your department. Because once you open up this channel and you have a place for people to generate conversation or direct conversation at you, if you don't answer, that in and of itself becomes a problem. So think about the conversations that you think you might have in public, and kind of determine then if Twitter is the place for you. Now, that's not saying you shouldn't be open and transparent and there aren't other digital tools that you could be using, such as IRC or some of the things that I sort of just discussed. But is Twitter, is Facebook the right place for you? And I think this is a no-brainer, and we're all learning this, but create and distribute well done, relevant content consistently. The worst thing to do is have a dead handle. And there's just sort of a social media handle, cemetery all over the internet right now. And listen, observe and share. And that goes back to having those genuine conversations with people, and then reporting back out the conversation that you had, the information that you received, and then what you're going to do about it. Because right now, I think we're in a space where people are okay with, like we talked about earlier in the presentation, with giving you information. But there's going to be a certain point where your publics are going to want to know what you're doing with it or how you're using it. And I think all over the world, we're at a point where we're okay, it's kind of novel and it's fun. But I think increasingly they're going to be, there's going to be sort of a disillusionment that happens with people using digital mediums. And then lastly, I've been hearing a lot of titles. We were talking about job titles, and community manager is one of the most popular job titles. And it's something that I would never call myself. I think if I tried to manage our volunteers, they would laugh at me. It's like, like I said, it's more of a collaborative process that we have. I don't tell anyone what to do. We work on our solutions and problems together. And I don't think that anyone who is part of a real community wants to be managed. So think about that when you have people who are managing your tools, that they are the kind of person who can have genuine conversations, that can talk to passionate people who are supporting your product or your brand or your idea or your mission, and just make sure you're cognizant of the fact that these people are doing it on their free time. Whether they're volunteers or your evangelists. These are people who care about what you're doing. And if you try and manage them and not talk to them, collaborate, and have conversations with them, it's more likely than not you're not really going to get to the most productive place with your relationship. And I think that is all that I have. So, talk, and feel free to email me or at me on Twitter.